Hey guys, welcome back to the Make Me Whole podcast. I'm your host, Josette Rosado, and today we are joined by Amy Lewtas, who is an astrologer and actually from Australia. And I'm so excited for her to just take the time. We are on different time clocks, but we are here doing the thing. Abby, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do. Give our listeners some insight as to the power behind astrology.
Yeah, hi, Josette. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. Um, where will I start? I perhaps should start with a little bit of background about myself.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I'm from Australia, and I grew up in the very south of the country, which is actually a lot cooler than what people think. People think of Australia and immediately think of hot weather, but
Yeah.
yeah, it does get very cold down in the south. So I was an athlete growing up, and I was very successful. I was a beach sprinter, and I also was talent ID'd into bobsledding. So
Wow.
I traveled the world and competed, and yeah, it was absolutely fantastic. In my late 20s, I had a pretty serious injury, which
Mm.
didn't really stop me from competing. I actually did a pretty strong rehabilitation work, and I got back out there and was able to continue competing after about a year. But it really made me stop and think, like, what am I doing with my life? At the time, I
Yeah.
was working in the city. I was working in event management. I had done a lot of studies, and I just sort of found myself on a path that wasn't really exactly right for me. So, um, after that one last year of competing, well, I guess I wouldn't say that it was my last year, because I did eventually come back around to um, the sports. It's just so ingrained in my in my blood, I think. But I ended up deciding to go traveling. I packed up my bag and bought a ticket to Buenos Aires, and I left Australia with a plan to travel for about 6 months.
Wow.
Um, I was having such a great time that I just did not want to come home. So I went to Canada, and I thought I'll work here for a season, which was at the time I had some massage therapy training, and so I had all that under my belt. So when I got to Canada, I started working in massage and really just went there to enjoy the snow season, which I had never really done before. So that was, very eye opening in itself. Um, and I ended up living there for about 3 years. So when I was there,
It
I
was a long
started playing.
stay, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. When I was there, I started playing roller derby, because that was, the sports just was something that is in my blood. Um, and I did really want to stay in Canada. I really loved the life that I was living there, but there was something that was pulling me home. So I really had to follow that. And I ended up coming back to the place where I grew up, which was really difficult because it was a very small town. And coming back to a small town when you've spent so much time away, yeah, it can be really challenging. And so
Sure.
I was kind of on a real soul searching journey through that time. So I ended up studying life coaching, and I had promised myself that I just didn't want to go back to the city or go back to a desk style job. So I ended up, after several years of studying life coaching, I decided to go back up to the snow, up to the ski fields in Australia, and continue working as a massage therapist. I knew deep down that I didn't really want to do that forever, and that I probably wouldn't be able to. Um, and so when I got up there, I was sort of faced with this transitional time, and I feel like I've had this many a time where, it's time to release some baggage and move to the next level of your life. And so this was all starting to happen at the very end of 2019,
Mm.
and at the start of 2020, I lost one of my best friends, and um, then we went into some pretty serious lockdowns where I was living. So I was able to actually have that focused time, and was a little bit daunting because I was on my own. And so
Wow.
spending all that time on my own really was able to give me the time to take a deep dive into this transformation. And yeah, I picked up a book called The Artist's Way, which is about, it's a great read that you read over 3 months, and every week you read a chapter and you follow the exercises, and it asks you to tap into your creativity, what the things that you love to do when you're a kid. And I picked up a lot of things that I used to love doing, and it was a really, really wonderful time. And one of those things that I picked up was astrology. I realized I lead a pretty minimalist life,
Mm-hmm.
and I realized that a lot of the books that I'd kept from my childhood were on astrology. And so I started reading books and podcasts and everything, and I just had this newfound love for something that I was once so intrigued by when I was a kid. And at the time, I was working with a mentor. She was helping me release a lot of things from my past and, step into this new version of myself. And she said to me, if you could do anything for the next 6 months, what would that be? And, I said, I want to do more in the space of astrology. So I actually started reading charts and, teaching people about their personal astrology. And that's really where everything started for me. So fast forward a few years now, and I have been building my astrology business as a bit of a side business, and it's at the stage now where it's just about to become, my full-time thing.
I love that. I mean, what an amazing way to just figure things out and get back almost full circle from where you started. And
Mm-hmm.
so tell me, how does this work? How do your clients come to you? What is it that they're looking for when they come to you? What
Mm-hmm.
is their journey at that point, at that level?
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, they're people that are interested in personal development. They're interested in understanding a little bit more of themselves. They've perhaps been through a challenging time, and they're working to pull themselves out of that. And they may be in the thick of things, or they may have gone through all of the really, really hard stuff by this stage.
Yeah.
But they're just curious to learn a little bit more, and they're open to a different approach. Maybe they've tried several
Yeah.
things before, and they're just curious to find out more about themselves. And so I think really with that openness and that intrigue, they're looking to uncover what astrology has to tell them about their personality. And that's what I can share with them and show them in their natal chart.
It's funny because so many people, I mean, well, you think about it. When people used to read newspapers, they don't do it so much now. When people used to read newspapers, one of the first things they would go to is like, okay, what does my horoscope say for today? And they
Mm-hmm.
base a lot of like, well, did that happen? Will that happen? Oh my goodness. And people still kind of do that because that's
Mm-hmm.
what our perception sometimes of, that's as far as it goes. If I have a certain, if I fall in line with some uh specific sign, then that's as far as it goes. But it's so much more. There's so much more involved in it. And
Yeah.
I myself I'm big on like, okay, well, that's an Aquarius trait. Like I just had a birthday, and I have
Happy
a
birthday.
few. Thank you. I just had a few other, like I have a couple of Aquarians around me, and we just go, well, this is our season. Like
Yeah.
this is our season. And so I'm big on understanding what that actually means, how that
Mm-hmm.
affects personalities. What's your take on it? What is it that people like? Are there commonalities? Is what the perception out there true, or is there more? Is it
Mm-hmm.
based more individually?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's absolutely more. And I think what you're talking about is the very important gateway that astrology has into the wider world. So, when you're talking about the horoscopes and we break that down into the 12 signs, this is known as pop astrology. And this made a
Okay.
really big revival in the 60s. And it's when, we started to see all the, I mean, I wasn't here, but when it was in vogue to have horoscopes in the media, in the magazines and the newspapers, and it became a part of, you know, every publication. And people would, as you said, and as you did, pick up the paper and read their horoscope. And so, you know, this is the very open gateway that
Yes.
can draw people in, essentially, because, you know, it was really interesting when I was younger and I was training, and I must have been talking to my coach about astrology, and he just said to me, "Oh, how can the world possibly fit into 12 characteristics,
Mm.
right? 12 different characters." And yeah, I kind of, there was a comment that was really intriguing for me. And then fast forward to now, and I know that, you know, when we're looking at the pop astrology, it's really just looking at the star sign, which is the sign that your sun was in at the moment that we were born. So if we have an understanding of the sky, we know that there are, you know, there are 88 official constellations, and then we have 12 zodiacal constellations that sit around the center of the earth. It's called the zodiac belt, essentially. And so these are the signs that the ecliptic sits on, and all the planets you know, transfer and transit through these signs. And so when we're looking at a person's natal chart or their birth chart, we're essentially looking at the time that they were born. And so when you know the time that you were born, not just the date, you can get
Mm-hmm.
a really accurate picture of where all the planets were and in what signs they were in. Because not only do you have a sun sign, you also have a moon sign and a Mercury sign and a Venus sign. And every single planet in the sky sits in a sign. And they all have a different characteristic, or they play different archetypes in your personality. And we can really look to these planets and the different signs that they're in and the different angles they share with each other to get a real deep understanding of our personality, of why we are the way that we are, of why we might have certain strengths, and
Mm-hmm.
why we might have things that challenge us. And, you know, equally, we can also look to find the clues of how we can overcome those challenges. So, you know, the only time that you're going to get you know, a natal chart that is exactly the same as someone else's is, you know, when you have the exact same birth time and the
Yeah.
exact same birthplace as somebody else. So now you can
Wow.
start to understand how it can be so deep and complex, and, you know, there's countless combinations of planet placements that you can have in your chart.
It's so fascinating because you don't even think of it in that way. Um, and I just, you know, just as you broke it down in that idea, just that there's something so unique, so individual, it really helps you appreciate that, yeah, at some place in time you fit in, and it
Hmm.
set the stage for what was going to come and what could
Yeah.
absolutely be. So I just think it's so incredibly important for people to know just a little bit more. You know,
Yeah.
from the gateway move to the next level, you know, I think that's just fascinating. Um,
Yeah, absolutely.
what are people actually looking for when they come to you for that charting? What is it that what do you find is like the commonality that, or
Um,
something, maybe not everyone looking for, but just a commonality? Are they on a journey for healing? Are they on a journey for self-discovery? What is it that you find is the search point for those who are looking for your help and your
yeah,
services?
I think a little bit of both. People are, you know, everyone has their history and their whether they have traumas. So, you know, people are on a healing journey. Like, I'd be lying if I said that none of us are on a healing journey. I think
Yeah.
we all are, right? And so people are looking for ways, I think, to discover themselves and empower themselves. And I think, you know, that was the biggest thing that I found when I took the deep dive into my chart is it was just a really incredible way to empower myself and really step into the characteristics and the qualities that I have and really embody them and, allow them to come through and know that they were a part of me and have confidence with that. And I think I see that in a lot of the clients that I have. And when I meet with them and, 99 times out of 100, I have never met these people before. I might have
Right.
chatted to them on social media or on Instagram or something like this, but certainly don't really know them. And I think it's very confirming for them when I can tell them a lot about who they are. And I'm really reading this from a map that I'm looking at, a map of the stars. I'm reading it essentially in a mathematical way. I do use intuition in my practice. I do hear things, so I use those skills. And when I receive messages, I pass them on. But really, it is a language that I'm interpreting, and it's like a language of their personality. Sometimes people are looking for an understanding of why things are happening in their life,
Yeah.
or perhaps when might be a good time to step in to, relaunch their business or revamp their career, or they might be inquiring about relationships or family. These are pretty common themes that I see when I do chart readings.
Okay. Now, of course, just as with therapy and many of the wellness practices that are out there are people who are very critical of the work that we do. And so I
Mm-hmm.
wonder, how do you manage when people are critical or are, you know, just not as supportive of the work that you might be doing, which sounds like it could be very helpful to people who
Mm.
need answers? How do you
Mm-hmm.
address those types of people?
Mm. I haven't really seen too many people, who are critical, because by the time someone is ready to actually invest in themselves, they've probably done a little bit of research into astrology. I don't think the critics are actually going to come and,
Yeah.
invest. But what I will say is that when I work with people, the very first thing that I tell them is that. Astrology is very complex, and I am interpreting astrology in the way I know and the way I have learned. And this may not align with them. They could go and see another astrologer and have a completely, not a completely different reading, but a very different interpretation of what the chart is saying, because there are so many different ways to interpret something. And astrology is a language of symbols, and there's so much history and depth there. And so, the first thing I say to people after I say that is that they need to trust their intuition. And if I'm saying something that is not resonating or is not feeling right, I think we all know, or if we have a deep connection to our intuition, we
Mhm.
know when things are not sounding right for us.
Right.
And so I say to people, if something doesn't sound right for you, it's not a message. And tell me, like, let me know, no, this doesn't sound like me. And I can look for another interpretation of what I'm seeing. And so that's how I initially work with, with my clients is
Yeah.
from the get-go, I ask people to to really have a deep connection with their
Yeah.
intuition, and not everybody does. So it's a really empowering, first step.
No, I completely agree with you in that same respect. Whenever I'm meeting with a client for the first time, we're just consulting. We're just getting to know one another. And I tell them the test will really be if you feel like you want to schedule the next session.
Hmm.
Are we a good fit for one another? Is my style or what I'm saying to you resonating, or is it, are you looking at me like, I don't know if I want to come back and talk to this person. So I feel like that's just so important, especially in the space that you're holding for these people, because they're coming with some ideas to what they're looking for, and they need to
Mhm.
be able to trust themselves and what
Mhm.
they are trying to experience while they're with you.
Mhm.
What has been like the biggest, not the biggest, but maybe the like a client that's maybe has stood out to you, somebody who you've come across that was just like, wow, that was that session, that without giving much information, but that session with that client just not only was profound for them, but I didn't even know my skills were that good.
Well, to be honest, I actually have that so often because, I just think that astrology doesn't lie, and I'm really developing this knack for my craft, and I know that it's something innate within me. I have a deep connection to the
I love
stars, and
it.
so, but perhaps I could rewind to when I was stepping into this, a recommendation of a friend, and I didn't know who she was, and she just booked in through my website. I had no background information. I didn't recognize her from any social media, and I was in this. The way that I offer readings is I do two different types. I can do a reading where we connect live and we have a dialogue over Zoom or over video platform, or people can book in for a reading, and I will do an audio recording of their chart. I'll read it and I send that through. And so I get a lot of those. They're very popular because you don't have to set aside an hour of your time. You can just book that in, and the audio reading comes to your inbox at the time that you booked. And so this is what she had booked. And it was one of the first ones that I was doing. And I was reading in her chart, and one thing that sort of stood out was a placement that indicated, the potential loss of a father or a father figure, and you know, that message came in really strong. I was also hearing a lot of messages come in about this, and so I thought, well, I'm going to share this because this is obviously important, because I wouldn't be
Yeah.
hearing these messages if it wasn't important. And so I said in my audio message something along the lines of, it looks like you may have had the loss of a father figure or something with your dad. This is what the energy in the chart, or what I can see with the placement of the planets in the chart, is showing me. And I think it was as simple as that. And she came back to tell me that she had lost her father when she was young, and then her mother had started seeing another man, so she did have another father figure in her life, and then he was also very, very sick, I think terminally ill. And so that was sort of closer to the time period that we were sort of talking about it. So
Mm.
that really confirmed to me that I had no idea who my client was, but from the chart and from the messages that I was getting, that is a pretty specific message. And to have that almost confirmed twice, because she came back to me and shared that with me, was
Wow.
was really like phenomenal. And I just thought, there's so much more here that I just need to keep practicing and sharing this
Yeah, you
with the
definitely
people
found your
who are interested.
calling. Yeah.
Absolutely.
How can people be cautious about individuals who say that they're into astrology or are astrologists and really aren't?
hmm hmm I think the very first thing that you need to do is build a deep connection with your intuition, with your inner voice or your inner guide, whatever you would like to call it. Because if you can't trust yourself,
Mm.
there's no way that you can trust anybody else. So I would start there. I would start by, and this is what I tell a lot of people, even the astrology at this time, is calling us to really have a deep connection with our intuition, because as we move into the next few years, we can see how fast technology is speeding up. We're having so many advancements, and soon we're not actually going to know what is real. We're going to see videos online, and we're not actually going to know, or, some of those videos, I mean, we're already seeing it. Some of those videos
Already. Yeah.
they're actually not real. And so we need to use our intuition and ask ourselves, is this for me? Is this reader, if you're searching for someone to read your chart, or you're looking for an astrologer, or even a different type of reader, or a coach, or whoever it is, you need to drop into your body. Like, you can read and look at all the facts and get a feel for that person. Nowadays, we can look on social media, follow that person for a little while, see how they show up.
Yeah.
Is this the real person, for starters? And really see, does this person feel good for me? And we're not all for everybody. And that can even be seen in astrology, why you don't connect with certain people because of certain alignments that your chart may make with theirs. And so the very first thing I would say is to know that inside yourself, because at the end of the day, intuition is one of our most powerful tools. It is the thing that we need to use first. And then astrology comes next as a tool, not
Mm-hmm.
as a hard and fast rule. If you're
Right.
going to look for something outside of yourself, then that's disempowering. We need to use these tools to empower ourselves and look for the ways that, if this is what something is, if this is what I'm being told, how is the best expression of that energy? And first of all, does that feel right for me? Because if it doesn't, it's not for you.
Right. I think part of the reason why I thought it was important to have someone who works in your field is because as a therapist, I can do just so much with my clients, right? We do
Mm-hmm.
so many things. We can do a
Mm-hmm.
lot of things, but I always want my
Absolutely.
clients to think outside the box, and anything that they can do to dig deeper, I'm for it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes they'll tell me, well, I've done this and I've done that. And I'm like, okay, great. So how did that work? Or how does it feel? So I like what you're talking about when you say, like, trust your gut. Trust your
Mm-hmm.
gut to know that this is a good move towards your healing, towards whatever journey or problem or issue you're trying to get through. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's so important for people to know that it doesn't have to just fit in one box. You can have many boxes and many
Absolutely.
directions. So it sounds like, you're definitely able to lead people in that way. And I love the idea of just digging deeper and finding out, like, what else is there about me that I don't know about.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
you know,
I
yes.
think so too. And I think, like, there, with a lot of the people that I work with, there really is no surprises. I think the things that are uncovered sometimes, really, my clients know deep down that that is a quality that they have, or it's a characteristic. And, maybe they just haven't been bold enough to step up and own that, or courageous enough. But then, when they sort of see it there in plain sight in an astrological chart, which is tied to the moment that you were born, that's really powerful, because it's like, well, I actually have this quality in me. It's like, in the astrological language, this is what that means. And so it's really confirmation, and people can then step up and own that and start to embody it in a more powerful way.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I mean, how can people get in contact with you? Where can they
Mhm.
find you? How can they reach out?
Yeah, thanks so much, Josette. You can find me, my website is abbylewtas.com. And if you'd like to make an appointment or book a chart reading, you can go to my website. I'm also on social media at Stars by Abby. You can find me on Instagram, on Facebook and TikTok. And then I also have my own podcast where I talk about the astrology. I do a bit of teaching, and that podcast is Secrets of the Stars, Exploring Astrology with Abby.
And I'll be sure to add all of the links in the description for any of our listeners who want to just reach out to you directly. Abby, thank you so much for being here. This has been so cool. And I'm so grateful for people like you who are just really giving us more to think about and other directions that we can explore in our own selves of, who we are and what we can be. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And thank you so much. The work that you do is so important. I think mental health is such I've seen it from both sides. As an athlete, I've used it in a way that has really allowed me to, and in business too, I've really used it in a way that's empowering. But I've also seen the other side where, you feel like you're at the bottom, you're at the very bottom, and how are you ever going to get yourself out of here? So I think, it's such an empowering space to be working in and helping people. So yeah, I think the work that you do is so important. So thank you. And thank you
Thank
so
you.
much for having me on.
Well, thank you guys so much for listening today and showing up, and I'll see you on the next episode. Take care.